Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Poultry Network podcast. My name is Tom Willings. With me, Tom Woolman. Tom?
Hello, everyone. Tom Woolman here. Very pleased this episode to be joined by Richard Griffiths, who is the Chief Executive of the British Poultry Council. I'm conscious, Richard, there'll be some people that know of you and know you very well, and there'll be other people that don't. So I just wondered if you could just introduce yourself and give a bit about your background and what you do currently for the British Poultry Council.
Yeah, thanks, Tom, and thank you for having me on the podcast.
You're our first guest, Richard. You are, welcome, heralded as the first guest.
The pressure to
we're honoured.
Set the standard for everything going forward. But no, happy to do that. Tom, as you said, I'm the Chief Executive of the British Poultry Council. We're the trade association for the poultry meat side of the industry in the UK. So what that really means is that we're trying to establish a level playing field for our members in regulation, in perception, in relationships with government, all of those things that can add value to the sector.
And it's not just chicken, is it? I know we always focus on chicken, don't we, because it's a large part, but the BBC also stands up, doesn't it, for other types of poultry meat?
Oh, of course. Poultry across the board. We've got, as you say, chicken is the majority of it, but we have turkey, duck, and goose as well. Goose at Christmas.
Yes. No, I had a goose a few years ago, so it's probably about time I had one again for Christmas. I also remember, I hope you forgive me, Richard, but I do remember speaking to you previously. You worked in the quarry sector before you came into poultry, didn't you?
I did, yeah. It's a dim and distant memory now, but my starting point was mining engineering. Yeah. So that was my degree and first roles, and then moved into the Quarrying Trade Association, and now, coming up for 20 years ago, made the move over to poultry, frankly, because it seemed quite interesting. And the fact that I'm still here probably suggests that it actually is quite interesting.
And things changing now at a crazy pace. We've asked you to join us to talk a bit more about SPS, so sanitary and phytosanitary law changes. So for anyone who missed it, I think it was the 19th of May, the government has announced a degree of streamlining of the trade relationships between the European Union and the UK post-Brexit. Richard, our questions to you are really, what does that mean in layman's terms, and what does it mean for the farmer on the ground?
Yeah. I'll kick off then with because that's a huge subject. And I apologise up front because I'm going to do the politician's answer and answer a different question first, because I think it's really important on this subject to set the context of this.
Go ahead.
Because so you get so many different views on the specifics of our relationship with the EU, but look at the bigger picture. I think everybody who's going to be interested in this podcast has got to look at the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is food security. We're looking at how we feed our country over the next 10, 20, 30 years, and what we need to be able to achieve that. So everything that we do now, coming out of this really difficult period, Brexit, COVID, all the other global challenges, we have to decide how we're going to feed our country. So that's where our starting point should be, whether it's us as industry or you're in the government saying, what do we need to do? How do we support industry? But that is why the close relationship with Europe and this announcement on the SPS agreement and the negotiations that will happen are so important, because Europe remains our biggest, not just trading partner, but closest ally and closest relationship. So we want the best relationship with them we possibly can do, which in turn generates that sort of viable and profitable businesses, which we absolutely need in this country for the long term.
Yeah, because you started talking off, Richard, didn't you, about having a level playing field, and certainly what I know about the SPS arrangements immediately post-Brexit was that there wasn't a level playing field, was there? There were all sorts of onerous checks for our produce going to Europe, but actually we weren't reciprocating those checks for produce coming into the UK. So actually it was far easier for people to export from Europe into the UK than it was vice versa.
We've had 5 more years of really onerous added burdens to our businesses. We had to clear those hurdles at day one. So we were in a position where, look, the hammer's dropping for sort of end of 31st of December, and you have to comply 1st of January.
So government figures say exports down. I don't. This is not a poultry meat statistic, but a general overall market statistic. Exports down since 2019 by a third, 33%. I guess this regulation is about reversing that trend. So on the face of it, it should be good news for UK farmers. Yeah,
it should be. And poultry, and when I say poultry trade, what I'm talking about is both meat and genetics. So breeding stock as well. Yeah. Really important to remember that the poultry has those two elements, and the UK is really strong in both. So we've got they have slightly different requirements and problems, but part of the whole sector. Poultry as a whole has dropped by about a third. It is around that 30% export market, and we've got to remember that we have to trade. At our heart, we've had decades of preferring breast meat. So we are conditioned to that. So as a result, we do need to trade, particularly with dark meat exports, and import more breast meat. So we need that balance of trade.
Yeah.
And I think people have got fed up with the idea of frictionless trade or no friction, but it's absolutely right. You have to reduce the friction in that trading process both ways.
Well, particularly when you're dealing with something like meat, fresh meat, that actually, it's important, isn't it, that it gets from its source to its consumer as quickly as possible, with as good a shelf life as possible.
Well, that's it. We've been banging on for years about just-in-time supply chains. Not just us, but all the fresh produce suppliers and producers. And that never seems to quite land as how important it really is. The food supply chain has always got by, regardless of the problems it's faced. It's never fallen over. It's never been a catastrophic failure. And so I think that lets governments sort of in sort of government minds go, oh, they'll be okay.
Well, they call it the leave it to Tesco's strategy for many years. They'll sort it out.
The market takes care of it. But more and more we're seeing that the market, for all its benefits and all its advantages, generally works at a top down form, a trickle down. Hope that standards are really come in at the top, and sort of the benefits fall down the system. What we're seeing now more of an emergence of, and slight move away from a just-in-time supply chain to a just-in-case supply chain. So all the challenges we're facing, we have to build that resilience into our systems that give a bottom-up approach. That the phrase "rising tide lifts all boats." So we have to put things in place now that lifts everybody. We talk about standards, but it's how we trade. It's our relationship with food. It's issues like welfare or avian influenza or environmental impact. How do we lift everybody and make a resilient system? And the EU relationship is a key part of that.
Okay.
Back to your food security point, really. But
yeah, absolutely.
I was going to ask a question, Richard, if I may. When SPS was first covered a week or so ago in the news, there was some concern to do with either hindering future trade deals with other nations, or I think the term they used was sort of surrendering control to influence by European Court of Justice and sort of dynamic changes. What would your position be on that?
I think taking the second point first, I think we've never deviated from the standards and regulations because of this, in anticipation of this very move. We've kept those standards the same, as close as possible. So I think the benefits of a close relationship with the EU and the trading benefits and the efficiencies and the profitability that brings into our system far outweighs any woolly concerns about losing control or affecting other future trade deals. That's sort of saying, look, sorry, I don't want a relationship with you because I want to play the field. No, we're in a situation where food as a whole has been battered for years, is still standing, but we've had a tough time. So now we need some consistency and certainty in our systems.
I wanted to talk a little bit, Richard, if I may, about some of the dynamics in the broiler sector at the moment, where the majority of retail has downstocked their supply chain to 30 kilos a metre squared, which has put a little bit of a squeeze on housing stocks and on resources and being able to produce, the same number of birds, but obviously we need more space to do that. Where do you sort of balance the risk and reward when you're looking at international trade and food security? And I guess from a government point of view, they want to make sure that if we can't produce the food here, that we can import the deficit, and keep food prices where they need to be. Is there a risk that potentially as we start to open up trade with Europe, that actually that puts more pressure on the returns that some UK farmers are getting?
The pressure's always there. That's nothing new. I think everybody will recognise that it goes in peaks and troughs. Maybe that's the right description. But the pressure is always there. I think what we lack in this country at the moment, and I'm going to sort of travel optimistically in terms of like food strategy and what government's going to do. But what we lack is that vision of what we want to achieve. We as producers, and whether that's any part of the chain, whether that's the sort of manufacturers or the farmers, the entire chain, we've got no guiding light, as it were. Yes, we want to feed the nation, but the government needs to come in and say, look, our ambition is we want to be X self-sufficient, or no developed country should have people going hungry. So that's our aim. Something that all food can get behind, and therefore all policy and regulation can then follow in. The reducing the stocking density is a fantastic example. So good and bad, because on the good side, it's meant that producers have had really valuable conversations throughout the supply chain with their customers, with government, in the food environment, and said, look, we want a 10-year plan we're moving in this direction. Welfare is important to us. This is the direction, and we're willing to invest in it. The downside is, I think, as you're suggesting, Tom, is, are we moving too fast? Are we outpacing our trading partners, for example, that then allows for discrepancies and our market being undermined? Yes, there's that risk, but I think we have to take it. And I think the industry recognises, if we want long-term viability, we have to make these big steps forward.
Good. I was going to jump in there and say that sounds like a whole nother topic for a whole nother kind of bite-sized episode in terms of food security, and that tension between, the opportunity that it absolutely exists for poultry to feed not only our nation but our continent and the world as a global industry with efficient and healthy animal protein produced sympathetically, but set against that need with changing ambitions from a consumer point of view, changing perceptions from greater environmental concern and regulation. And, any change comes with a great deal of hard work, but how we balance that has got to be a subject for I think, another topic. Richard, we'll have to get you back on if you'll join us again.
Well, I apologise for the sort of scope of this, but once you get into these subjects, everything's connected, and that is actually one of our key challenges, particularly with government. Government often operates in silos. You do this bit over here and that bit over there, and we've got to get past that, because what you do with our relationship with the EU has a direct and material impact on our environmental performance, our welfare pathway, all these other elements. So I agree with you. These you could do a series of these podcasts on various subjects, but
we'll put your name down.
The EU is really important.
Yeah.
No. Well, thanks ever so much for joining us, Richard. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank
you very much. Thank you also for listening, and we will be back very soon with another episode. So watch out for that. But for the meantime, that's it from us. Thank you.